ready, as always, to face this good day that the good Lord has afforded us. We're alive and awake as well in studio, and our panelists are all already here in studio with us. Good morning, Dr. Mustafa.
Good morning, Dibal.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I know you had a trip to somewhere else that you'll tell us much later. So we're having bugbears and fears. Maybe we should have quarantined this guy, not just to tell him to self-quarantine. So he'll give us more details about this particular tour as well, and just to tell us and compare notes how people are actually faring on well as far as the coronavirus is concerned. That is Japan,
That's right.
You will tell us more. Dr. Hassan Khanenje, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Is it possible to have a face mask?
A face mask. Yeah. By the way, a face mask should be coming in handy. Yeah. I think in the other shows, not today, because I was not really prepared, because I know all of you. Well, I trust that the good Lord is keeping you well. Right? Yeah. But you can tell us more about a conference that was happening yesterday at Intercon?
Yes, at Intercon. Yes, it was a UN IGAT conference trying to deepen partnership within the Horn of Africa, especially when it comes to important players, government, academia, and civil society.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Ahmed Hashi, good to see you. Good morning.
Good to see you, Debal.
You never wear a jacket in this forum.
Yeah,
Why?
It's right there, but Debal, it's a working man's outfit. I come here to work and perform a civic duty. And of course, I have to use my brain, so I want to keep my jacket out so I don't overheat.
You don't overheat?
Yeah. So,
so your jacket, they don't go hand in hand with your brain?
Go with my brain.
Ambassador, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Yes, how are you?
I feel some of the heat coming from me.
Already? Yeah. Before we began the show?
Yeah,
Good to see you. Okay. Professor Noami Damba?
Good morning, Deba.
I think from KC University, a lot was happening also the previous week. You can tell us more about your new Vice Chancellor.
That's correct.
There was installation of a new Vice Chancellor.
Yeah, I'll be very happy to tell you about Ole Mugenda.
Yeah, tell me now, because this is your...
He's joined us as a real good partnership. In other words, let me just say, universities are 1,000 years old today.
Universities?
Yes, and it takes 100 years for any university to mature. And that means none of our universities in Kenya has matured. They mature because of corporate relationship, they mature because of strategic thinking. And see if Oliver's joined us, one of the strategic thinker in this zone.
But what metrics are we using to actually gauge 100 years of maturity of universities?
What criteria?
What is maturity then?
Maturity, that means it's stabilized.
It has stabilized.
It's stabilized in terms of the structure. It's stabilized in terms of resources. It's stabilized in terms of its strategic direction. You will say Oxford, Cambridge are mature.
They have matured.
You will say that Harvard University has matured. And so it takes that long.
It takes that long
for any university to function.
Okay.
What we have in Kenya, you can see all kind of fights that are going on among the universities.
All right.
That is development.
That is development.
That's right.
All right.
That's
so
growing pain.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. We will of course be learning more about universities, I think, in other forums here on AM Live as well. But of course, they're here, and here is their profiles.
Where's your coffee?
Tuweke FB nini FB huku. Right, we continue apace with the show, and we'll be remiss if we don't show you also what is on the front pages of our dailies today. Fresh off the press is the Daily Nation with this headlining story about the BBI, big test for BBI. No cash for referendum, it says. It's all about divisions, Eldoret rallies cancelled over threats of violence against Raila's team. Budget policy statement has provided only 4.6 billion shillings for the Electoral Commission's operation in 2020-21. Ruto tough, holding meeting in Eldoret could have seen Deputy President William Ruto's allies dominate, and Huru factor pushed to have the president attend Eldoret and Nakuru rallies force organizers to settle for one. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Story tucked away on page 4 and 5. And here you can see a related picture. ODM leader Raila Odinga addressing BBI rally at the Ole Ntimama Stadium in Narok County on February the 22nd. Since Nakuru is considered the country's political bedrock, President Kenyatta might attend. As a host county, we urge tolerance, inclusion and sobriety for the benefit of the residents. This is what Governor Lee Kinyanjui is saying. Also, on the sidebar there, coronavirus, be safe at work. How prepared is your workplace for the eventuality of an outbreak? That is a question. See what firms in Kenya and elsewhere are doing to keep employees safe. And as we said, also we'll be providing our panelists with masks. I don't know how they're going to be talking. Maybe we're going to perforate this particular mask of theirs here in the studio. 2 and 3, the story that you could follow. Also, prosecution, DCI disagree on Manduku. The Directorate of Criminal Investigations and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions appear to be reading from different scripts, where the officers clashed over the status of investigations and prosecution of Kenya Ports Authority Managing Director Daniel Manduku and the Kenya Revenue Authority Commissioner for Customs Kevin Safari in court yesterday. This story continues on page 7 of the Daily Nation today. This is how it looks. So make sure you grab a copy for yourself. Also on top here, finally farmers get cheaper fertilizer. It's a major victory for farmers as the government dismantles cartels that had conspired to monopolize supply and control prices of fertilizer. Also tomorrow in the Daily Nation, bring your own blood. The perennial blood shortage in the country is dire. Now women going for cesarean sections at great risk as hospitals are advising them to tag along 2 blood donors. You can read the rest of the story in tomorrow's Daily Nation. This is the Daily Nation today. The Standard is holding this particular splash for you. Clash of the Giants. Feud is here. Tensions between DPP and Nuruddin Haji and DCI boss George Kinoti boil over in court after prosecutor disowns charges drafted by investigators against KPA boss, prompting magistrate to free suspects. And we have the prosecutor Joseph Riungu saying, quote-unquote, it is very unfortunate that the DCI decided to drag the persons to court in total disregard of the DPP's directive that he needs to do an independent review of the file. The DPP is very disappointed about the way the case is being conducted. Also, lead investigator, this is Gitwathi Njoroge, is saying, quote-unquote, it is a difficult matter and situation for the DCI. I don't understand the differences between us and the prosecution since we followed due diligence, prepared the charge sheet and brought the suspects to court. This is how it looks this morning. The Standard, also on top here, lessons I learned from running my business. 3 enterprising women, Winnie Ngumi, Maggie Reri and Joanne Mwangi, discuss secrets of their success and when to quit or hold on to a business. This is in the Hustle Pullout magazine that comes in handy for you also inside the Standard. Also breakup, Kenyan songstress Tanasha Dam's Bongo Star Diamond. You can read that also inside the Standard this morning. A quick look now at other dailies, and this is what is on the front page of the Star this morning. Lawyers, politicians probed over Somalia. We shall be discussing also this intensively with our panelists this morning. Investigation State wants to know what links Somali leaders have with Mogadishu. Speaker rules that 11 MPs who met President Farmajo did not break law. This is what the Speaker says, and we'll give you that story also much later in the course of the program. Page 4 and 5 is where this story is tucked away. And just look at this. This is how Nairobi was looking yesterday. Shame of stinking Nairobi city. A pile of garbage that has accumulated blocking the road in Shaurimoyo Estate, Nairobi yesterday. And of course also a smattering of this was in the CBD as well. So who was doing this? And this is in light of what is ongoing with the management of the Nairobi County as it is right now. This is a start. KPA's Manduku and KRA's Safari out without charge. A missing charge sheet led to the release yesterday of KPA Managing Director Daniel Manduku walking out of court a free man along with KRA Commissioner Kelvin Safari. Also Nginyo Kariuki from barbershop to national politics, veteran politician and businessman. Nginyo Kariuki was described yesterday as a rare man, one who will never lobby and bribe people with money during campaigns. He was never elected. The story continues on page 2 of the Star. And this is how it looks for you this morning. All right, let's see what we have also on the front page of the People Daily and other dailies as well. Let me just head over now quickly to see what we have on the front page of, I'll show you the People Daily, which is a hard copy. I remember I didn't just get the soft copy in time, but this is what is on the front page of Taifa Leo. Hawana muda wa raia. That is a splash today. Mawaziri wapuuza kikao cha kueleza maandalizi ya kuzuia na kukabili coronavirus. This is what it's saying here. Mawaziri watatu jana walikataa kufika mbele ya kamati ya pamoja ya afya ya bunge la taifa na seneti kueleza kuhusu matayarisho yaliyofanywa na serikali kuzuia na kukabiliana na virusi vya corona iwapo vitazuka nchini. It continues saying that kamati hiyo ilikuwa imewaalika mawaziri Mutahi Kagwe, Fred Matiang'i na James Macharia wa uchukuzi, afya na usalama kuwapa Wakenya habari kuhusu hatua waliochukua tangu rais apeane masharti. The story continues on page 2 of Taifa Leo this morning. Also mkutano wa BBI Eldoret wairishwa kwa hofu ya kuzuka fujo. This story continues on page 3 of Taifa Leo. These are the faces that have not really appeared before the parliamentary committee. Also mzozo wa Kenya na Somalia watashia biashara ya miraa. The story continues on page 7, and makala ya magwija wa lugha ya Kiswahili also is inside the Taifa Leo this morning. A quick look on what we have on the front page of the dailies across. But before we go there, we have the Business Daily as well. AG6 funds homes of firms, secret investors. State demands identities of shareholders owning more than 10% stakes in firms. Now the state is now demanding details such as names, phone numbers, and residential addresses of investors who own more than 10% stakes in companies through secret accounts. The new regulations, which are aimed at curbing insider trading, will shed light on market activity by curbing the use of nominee accounts that investors have been using to sidestep ownership limits in firms listed at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. They are also targeting to curb money laundering by revealing the true identity of investors owning large blocks of shares in both private and listed companies, who will also be of interest to the Kenya Revenue Authority. Under the new regulations, which were published last Friday and took effect on February the 10th, firms will now be compelled to reveal the identities of secret shareholders who control more than 10% in firms to the Attorney General through the Registrar of Companies. This story is on page 4 of the Business Daily. And shilling hits on CBK's 40 billion shillings dollar buy plan. The Central Bank of Kenya, it says here, is seeking to buy 40.5 billion shillings, that is $400 million from banks between this month and June, to increase dollar reserves amid rising uncertainties in the global markets over the coronavirus outbreak. The bank has bought dollars in the past through open market operations, but it does not usually disclose the target amount or any other details. CBK yesterday said shifts across the globe, including a significant drop in oil prices that eased pressure on Kenya's imports, have opened a window for a more formal dollar purchase, arguing that it will purchase a minimum of $1 million from banks at prevailing rates in each deal. This story, more details also, is well fleshed out for you on page 4 of the Business Daily. A jig for antelope, and we can see here standalone picture here. Tourism and Wildlife Cabinet Secretary Najib Nabala, DYMP Martin Owino, and Homa Bay Governor Cyprian Awiti joining members of Kagan Kochia traditional dancers in a jig, I should say, at Ruma National Park yesterday. During the International Wildlife Day celebrations, the government launched a strategic plan to save the endangered roan antelope. All that also continues inside the Business Daily today. MPs to probe Auditor General recruitment delay. Parliament has stepped in, seeking to unravel the mystery behind the delay in hiring the next Auditor General almost 7 months after Edward Ouko's term lapsed, and this will be next week. Remember, up to now, as we always been mentioning, we don't have an Auditor General. Many of the companies cannot also issue, or the listed companies cannot issue their dividends as it is right now, since the Auditor General has not appended his signature on the financial reports. But we see the Capital Markets Authority gave a window to firms to actually submit their their annual financial reports without the signature of the Auditor General. This story continues on page 5 of the Business Daily. Today's digit is 89 billion shillings bad loans in trade sectors in the quarter to June 2019, according to CBK. The story continues on page 20 of the Business Daily. Cash-strapped retailers, Choppies fires 583 workers. Choppies supermarket has fired 583 workers in recent months as the retail chain struggled to survive strained cash flows and heightened competition for Kenya's shopping basket. This story continues on page 7 of the Business Daily. Alexander Forbes deal boost fund to 130 billion shillings. Johannesburg bears Alexander Forbes. Business realignment has handed Kenya's Octagon African multinational company pension accounts, raising the local firm's assets under management to 130 billion shillings. This is all in the Business Daily today. Across the region, let's see what we have on the front page of the Citizen in Tanzania. John Pombe Magufuli in surprise meetings with opposition politicians. ACTZ was Orlando chief advisor and veteran opposition politician in Zanzibar, Saif Sharif Hamid, NCCR Mageuzi chairman James Mbatia, and CUF chairman Ibrahim Lipumba met President John Magufuli separately at State House in Dar es Salaam. You can follow the story on page 2 of the Citizen today. You can see a related picture there. And bus fare soars after Moro Bridge collapse. Coronavirus latest developments also is given here. And we have Paris with new toll and key developments here in the latest. Here is the latest, I should say, in the coronavirus, it reads. And you can read the rest of the details also inside the Citizen if you're waking up in Tanzania this morning. Still there, we have Mwananchi, and this is a splash on the front page of Mwananchi. Matumaini mapya ni baada ya Magufuli kukutana na viongozi wa upinzani Ikulu. This is what we have on the front page of Mwananchi. Let's move on and see what we have on the front page of the East African and the other dailies as well. I'll show you also the editorial cartoons as well. But we head down to Rwanda a bit. New guidelines issued on public contracts is a splash today. And you can follow the rest of the details on page 4 of the New Times. And over 70,000 or 7,000 to receipt, I should say, teaching examinations. Over 7,000 to receipt teaching examinations. This is on page 3. Kigali rapid urbanization calls for serious attention. This is according to experts. This is a standalone picture here on the front page of the New Times. Right, also, I don't have it here, but on the front page of the Daily Monitor in Uganda, since also they're keeping an eye on the coronavirus, the coronavirus scare has also prompted the government to ban all public meetings as it is right now. All public meetings in Uganda, they have been banned by the government. So that is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Let me try and show you what we have on the front page, or I'll show you this on the other side with editorial cartoons as well, which is up next with laughter and levity. Right, it seems we don't have the bumper, but I'll show you. This is what we have in the Star today. Above the low, this is what has been drawn by Ozone today. Bail terms, right above the low, right lower there. I'll leave it for you to decipher this. This is in the Star this morning. Let's just move on and see what we have on the editorial page of the Standard. This is what Gado has done for us. My laws, my clients support BBI. I'll leave it for you to decipher this as well. This is in the Standard today. Also, we have the People Daily. I have taken all the safety measures. This is what third world countries are saying right now, but you can see we have the balls in chain there. Our feet actually, they're stuck there with the ball in chains, and this is HIV, AIDS, cancer, and Ebola. Now we have a new threat. This is coronavirus. How prepared is Africa? That is a probing question there, and this is what has been drawn by Stano inside the People Daily today. I will show you what we have in the Daily Nation much later in the course of the program. But here is also our coronavirus update. And up to 1/5 of employees could be off work in Britain when the coronavirus outbreak peaks, according to the government, as it outlined a new action plan. Britain so far has 39 confirmed cases of COVID-19, and Prime Minister Boris Johnson warned this was highly likely to increase. More than 3,100 people have died and over 90,000 have been infected worldwide. But the Prime Minister said for the overwhelming majority of people who contract the virus, this will be a mild disease from which they will speedily and fully recover. In a press conference with his chief medical and scientific advisor at Downing Street, Johnson unveiled the steps his government will take if coronavirus takes hold in Britain. This includes asking people to work from home, reducing the number of large gatherings such as football matches, and shutting schools. The pressure on emergency services could see police concentrate on only the most serious crimes, and hospitals both delay operations and bring retired healthcare staff back to work. But these measures will not be introduced until the outbreak is clearly established, and only then if experts assess the benefits outweighing the costs.
But I fully understand public concern, your concern about the global spread of the virus, and it is highly likely that we will see a growing number of UK cases. And there are long-established plans by which the police will, obviously they will keep the public safe, but they will prioritise those things that they have to do, and the army is of course always ready to backfill as and when, but that is under the reasonable worst case scenario.
Overall, probably around 1% of people who get this virus might end up dying based on the Chinese experience. Now, to be clear, what that therefore means is 99% of people will not. And if, as I think is entirely possible, a higher proportion than we currently are aware of get the infection without any symptoms, in fact, that mortality rate will go down.
So we shall be discussing this with our panelists, and I'll give you more updates because even the US toll from the novel coronavirus has risen now to 9, which is since on Tuesday, and all in the state of Washington, and many of them residents of the same nursing home. 8 of the deaths have been in King County, which encompasses Seattle, and 1 was in neighboring Snohomish County. Nationwide, there were more than 100 confirmed cases in both coasts and in the Midwest. The Life Care Center, a nursing home and rehabilitation facility in the Seattle suburbs, is at the center of the Washington outbreak so far. We'll give you more updates on this. I'm just experiencing some technical challenges with my playout this morning, but we'll rectify that and, of course, continue with the conversation. But back home, National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi has cautiously let off the hook 11 MPs accused of visiting a foreign nation discreetly, only reminding them their first allegiance is to Kenya. Speaker Muturi has also called them out for not having notified his office of the travel, as is stipulated in the standing orders. NTV's senior political affairs reporter Kennedy Mureithi has more on this.
Furor has been building over the Somali trip made by 11 MPs in what pundits have said amounts to treason.
When citizens, senior citizens, begin to behave in a certain way, it's not called betrayal or cheating on me. It is called espionage. It is called treason.
Beseech you to behold.
Tuesday afternoon, Speaker Justin Muturi, in his communication to the House, exonerated the MPs from any wrongdoing, but called them out for not having informed his office.
All members are reminded to always abide by the provisions of Standing Order number 260, requiring members traveling outside Kenya, whether in official or private capacity, to always notify the office of the Speaker.
What we were doing as members of Parliament is parliamentary diplomacy.
A parliamentary delegation is constituted in a manner that reflects the different shades of political parties in the House, gender, regional balance, among other considerations. In this regard, the alleged visit by the said group of members of this House to the Republic of Somalia was not a parliamentary delegation.
It has been claimed that the MPs met Somalia's intelligence chiefs during the trip, but they insist they only met President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, and they had the blessings of President Uhuru Kenyatta, whom they visited at State House on 24th February.
And when we visited State House, they said, look for homegrown solutions, look for answers on how we can be able to confront Al-Shabaab. And where is the origin of Al-Shabaab?
They are really waiting for President Uhuru Kenyatta to give them a date so that they could actually brief him on what transpired between them and President Farmajo, even insisting that they did not meet anybody else other than the president, and they have his goodwill message to President Uhuru Kenyatta.
You start with the top level of leadership. You don't go to NIS, neither do you go to Somalia security agencies. We thought the best option is to engage His Excellency Farmajo.
But as this unfolds, Mandera County government leadership has now asked staff to stay away from office for their own security.
Mandera County is not a battleground for any militias whatsoever, for foreign militias.
The Council of Governors has also warned over escalating tensions, calling on the national government to swiftly deal with the security threat. Kennedy Mureithi, NTV.
All right, so if you're really privy to this particular story, on Monday we had also the Daily Nation carrying this story, revealed secrets of MP Somalia's trip. If maybe just pick that. Tough questions for 11 politicians who secretly left Nairobi on Saturday for Mogadishu, where they were hosted and dined by President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo in what could herald a fresh diplomatic tiff between Kenya and its neighbors. And we saw, of course, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs really castigating this particular trip in Somalia. You can see them now alighting that particular aircraft. Wajir East MP Rashid Kasim, Mandera East's Omar Sela, also that is Malim, and Lagdera's Mohammed Hire, and Kulo Malim as well. And we have Murithi Kangi saying, this is the secretary, saying, what was of concern to the country was how the MPs traveled to a foreign country without the necessary clearance. And the story was well fleshed out for you on page 6 of Monday's Daily Nation. Of course, we are standing on guard where we keep an eye on the enemy. And this, as we had some comments there from our resident analyst here, Peter Kagwanja, that this is tantamount, or this is actually sort of an espionage, so to speak, and that is treasonable, according to him. But we want just to throw this to our panelists this morning and just see where did they err as far as this is concerned. Did they get the necessary clearance according to the standing orders that the Speaker was saying there? And we have our panelists already. We ran by you their profiles. They're already here. Let's hear from Ahmed Ashi. Just begin with you.
Well, I think our colleague, who's unfortunately not here, Mr. Peter Kagwanja.
Peter Kagwanja was last night on Sidebar.
Yes, I think he just ate too much ngwashe. Did really give us a proper analysis of that situation. I mean, the language of being fastidious, the ability to look into details that are really not there, obfuscates the sense or the facts of the matter. And Debal, just like that old detective story, someone just says, just the facts, ma'am. And we just saw the Speaker of the National Assembly say that those members of Parliament asked for permission, and he gave it to them. Members of Parliament are sovereign persons. This is the National Assembly. The second thing is, Debal, I heard about the Foreign Office. They should have informed the Foreign Office. There's no protocol for this. I was there, I worked there, I know. There's no protocol, there's no piece of paper that says this is what you need to do. And another thing, Debal, we have a separation of powers in this country. We have the executive, we have the National Assembly, and we have the judiciary. It is the Foreign Office that's supposed to report to Parliament. It's not Parliament that wants to report to the Foreign Office. It's a no-no. Parliament is a reporting institution. They don't need to go to the but of course, Debal, when it comes to wisdom and sagacity, I think these MPs, are quite foolish, in my opinion. They acted in a very foolish way. I think that they should have covered all their bases. They should have spoken even to the security officials, even if they did not need to speak to them. They obviously know that Kenya and Somalia have a huge problem diplomatically. We have a conflict. Yesterday, the Somali federal government and the clan militias were fighting inside Kenya's territory. I mean, so we have a lot of, in Mandera, so we have a lot of problems. But I think this being fastidious about these MPs and trying to make an issue out of it, harks back to that old shifter mentality about, here in Western Kenya, the Bukusus cross and go and eat ugali with their friends over there. Here in Maasai land, where I'm from, they cross to go to Arusha to go and eat meat to them. The Mustafa and his Kales can go across there and do a marathon in Uganda. You have seen Dr. William Ruto campaign with Mr. Museveni in Uganda. You have seen Raila Odinga go to the Acholis in northern Kenya to go and campaign with the Endalangi. And this kind of all sentiment, Debal, is this tribal discourses that is all over the region, I think is probably the problem. I also think that the Somali MPs were wrong to go to Farmajo because what's Farmajo going to do about security in northern Kenya? Nothing. He cannot maintain his own security in his own country. He's Shabab been there, and he's been there for the last 5 years. He's done nothing about them. Mogadishu, the explosions are there every day. So, Debal, I don't see the policy point of going to see Mr. Farmajo about security in northern Kenya. Security in northern Kenya is in the hands of the people of northern Kenya. And when they decide that that security is going to be there, it will be there. And the security forces in Kenya need to buttress that, and the intelligence needs to buttress that. We need a Kenyan solution to the issues of northern Kenya. However, they're interlinked. And because there is no state in Somalia, and because we're going to suffer this problem, I've heard members from the political class say that the buffer zone is failing in Somalia. That's just clan politics, Debal. The buffer in there is working. It's not working very well, but it's working. And of course, it's stopping a lot of terrorists and a lot of problems from spilling over. But we have to really reassess. We all in this panel and in this government, we really have to reassess our Somali policy. It's a complete overhaul of this policy. The first question we have to ask is, are we state building? Are we peacekeeping? What's our exit strategy? Or is there mission creep now in Somalia? How are boys and ladies and girls in the armed forces? Are we going to just keep on leaving them there to die? What was our policy in the original place and what's happening after 10 years? Is Mr. Madobe in Jubaland delivering to us on security? I mean, there needs to be a complete rethink and a complete overhaul on how we deal with security and how we deal with these issues in Somalia. And I think this MPs thing is just a storm in a teacup, and they shouldn't have sent soldiers and askaris to the airport to go and deal with the MPs. I mean, this is pathetic.
Right, so Dr. Mustafa, was there a violation of the standing orders?
But let me speak to this from a conflict resolution point of view and perhaps national security, then talk about the violation. Dibal, the context is such that there is trouble in Somalia. And so what is happening inside Somalia today, first of all, is sad. Instead of the Somali federal government fighting Al-Shabaab, now they are fighting other states and leaving Al-Shabaab to proliferate. Now, the current conflict between Kenya and Somalia is quite sensitive. And for the Somali MPs to actually go to Mogadishu, as Hashia said, was not wise. They should have looked at various considerations before going there. Kenya is in conflict with Somalia, actually, with regard to the maritime challenge. There are issues between Nairobi and Mogadishu that need to be resettled, and there are border issues. In terms of the structure, there is what is called the Joint Border Commissions. Now, so there are structures to deal with those issues. And some of those elected leaders actually sit on those commissions. So that's where they should be resolving this problem from, Dibal. In terms of the MPs are state officers. And so it's very important that MPs as state officers actually inform and engage the various organs in the government. Not necessarily to get permission, Dibal, but they need to know what they're going to do. Otherwise, what were they going to do in Mogadishu? In conflict resolution, Dibal, even if we are talking about establishing back-channel communications, maybe that's what they want to do, and it's okay to establish back-channel communications, but state officers do not participate in this kind of back-channel communications. Ambassador Mwencha will tell you that when there is open conflict, sometimes you actually engage in some kind of back-channel communication, including with elders, religious leaders, in order to try and plead with the other parties. Now, the MPs that went to Mogadishu are state officers. If there's anything that they are going to vote in Parliament with regard to Somalia, they will have to vote on the side of Kenya because they are Kenyans and they've sworn to their allegiance, patriotism, and to protect the sovereignty of Kenya, Dibal. So it's a rather murky field that these MPs have gotten themselves into. And when you then go into such a country without engaging with various agencies in the country, they'll start asking questions because questions are being asked. Now, if it's about meeting intelligence, if at all they met the intelligence chief in Mogadishu, and I'm saying if, you know, the work of intelligence is so critical, is so sensitive, and it is the work of the intelligence, their counterparts here, to meet their counterparts in Mogadishu, not the members of parliament, Dibal. And so these are issues that will really need to be clarified. There are many conflicts between Kenya and its borders. We've seen that in Tanzania, Ethiopia, and some of those joint border commissions actually do work, Dibal. Finally, my final point, Al-Shabaab has increasingly become a homegrown problem. Has increasingly become a homegrown problem. Yes, yes. And we have Kenyan Al-Shabaab. Some of this stuff, a part of it, we need to address it locally. The answer to Al-Shabaab is not only just in Mogadishu. And so the leaders in Northeastern, particularly the members of parliament, the politicians and religious leaders, will need to work very closely with the Kenyan government officials in order to deal with the Al-Shabaab problems. You can see how, for example, and I give an example of cattle rustling, how government officials are working with local leaders. Sometimes they're problematic. There are others who are very good and are working very closely with government, like Governor Lonyangapuo, and they are dealing with this issue of cattle rustling. in northeastern Kenya, the challenges that are affecting the people there, the communities there with regard to terrorism are going to be dealt with effectively when there is proper working relationship between Kenyan government officials, the leaders in northeastern, religious leaders and elders in northeastern. Anything that is coming out of Somalia, that's between the states and they have to deal with it. They will have to deal with Al-Shabaab. But Dibal, it's a sad day for the region that the Somali National Army is fighting the armies of member states instead of fighting Al-Shabaab.
I agree with that.
Right. Let's hear from Dr. Hassan Khanenje. And we need also to focus, when it is Mogadishu and maybe Jubaland, we've known also there's some MPs who visited Jubaland, and we've never had these reactions that we've had, and Ethiopia, and we've never had these reactions that we're seeing right now also from government as it is. Did they went through the back channels? Right? What were they discussing? Is it issues to do with national security? So why are we, in a sense, seeing a selective reaction, so to speak?
First of all, Dibal, the MPs' perhaps intentions might have been good, but the action was ill-advised. Now, it is important for us to understand the context under which this is happening. Number one, increasingly, the government in Mogadishu has been extremely hostile to Kenya. From their statements, including recently their UN ambassador calling Kenya a destabilizing force, in Somalia. Those are serious indictments, of a neighboring country. Now, there are not two countries in the region that are so connected culturally, socially, religiously, name it, like Kenya and Somalia. These are brotherly countries. However, Mogadishu has not been treating Kenya as such, and a lot of it actually has to do with an attempt to externalize problems, from Somalia. Facing an election that is coming up, part of it, this year and then early next year, it is convenient to try and create an enemy. Now, unfortunately, that enemy is happening to be Kenya, to try and mobilize, and whip up the public sentiment. But this is extremely serious for us, in part because Kenya moved into Somalia not because they wanted to occupy Somalia. And I think it's important for the public to understand, we don't hold brief for government here. We're simply trying to make analysis objectively as citizens who love this country and who love this region. And to the extent that right now, the government in Mogadishu is training its arms on its own, against the states. It's an action that has been condemned by the United Nations Security Council about a week and a half ago, actually. I think it was the 24th. So it's not just something Kenya is complaining about. It is something that can threaten to get out of hand. Now, with regard to our members of parliament going to Somalia, perhaps as a back channel, you see, any fundamental change with regard to relations or national security cannot be done between a section of population and another country. These are national issue. And so whatever agreement that can be reached there can never be implemented if the national government actually is not privy to it. And that is why, even though whether the standing orders or whatever might not really rather force you to do to consult or to seek permission, it's just a matter of wisdom to do that. Now, when was the last time, for instance, American congressmen never visited this country or anywhere in the world without the knowledge of their government? Number two, if anything were to happen to those MPs, those are our citizens. The government has an obligation to protect them. But if you're not aware, how are you going to actually even do that? Because let's say they go there and whatever chopper they're in is, is shot down or whatever it is. We have an obligation to protect them and to make sure we're going to secure them. How are we going to do that when we are not even aware of what is happening? Number three, in an environment of apparent hostility, I think it's very, very important that every citizen tries to consult widely before they actually engage in something. And of course, some of us have been discussing about the importance of track 1 and track 2 diplomacy and track 2.5, these back channels. because sometimes those are more effective. However, there has to be a format and a formula of doing that, because anytime citizens try to go it alone in doing things, they may actually be playing in the hands, and especially right now, what sometimes we see as exporting the clan dynamics from Somalia to Kenya and using that to fan emotions, and we stop actually thinking rationally at that point. That is not going to help us in fighting terror or in trying to bring about regional peace and security.
All right. Let's hear from Erastus Manja.
Dibal, we are dealing with a very delicate situation, and in this situation, our words must be measured, and our thoughts must also be calculated. There are 3-4 fundamental issues that we're dealing with here. But first of all, the environment. And I think Hashi brought out a very important point, that we have our boys and girls, young men and women who are in Somalia with a mission to for peace building or peacekeeping, but also we need to develop a strategy on how to stabilize Somalia and come out. The environment we are is getting very toxic, and I think the first thing that we should do, and this is a call to IGAD and AU, that we must do everything possible to de-escalate this. Unfortunately, there is a regional context to what is happening, because it's no secret that the regional powers, particularly those in Somalia, have not been reading from the same script. And so we need to be very careful. And of course, there is also now the local dynamism. There is no doubt that if you look at what is happening in northeastern Kenya, schools are not operating properly, teachers have run away, and so the population is bound to be thinking about how do they get out of this quagmire. And in finding a solution, we can stumble. I think what Mustafa brought out very early on to say, you normally establish back channels. I listened to one of the MPs saying they have a message for the president from Somalia. I mean, this is not how you do your back channels. This is not how you do it. It is not through megaphone. Using megaphone diplomacy is precisely the wrong thing. And you're putting the president in a very awkward situation, because in effect you are saying our foreign policy has failed. You are saying that our state is not capable of doing this. And so that is a very, 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 very delicate situation. As we move forward, and I think to us, I think what is important is not so much to analyze the dangers and what have you, but how do we go forward? I think we need to get our National Assembly to step in and rein in both the executive, the legislature, and so that we can have a coherent policy. Because it is clear that from this kind of action is a lack of coherent policy. And therefore the population is bound to think of, okay, all acting in dissonance. The second one is, first of all, to bring in the region and really say, is the focus on the mission in Somali working. You saw the other day, U.S. signed an agreement with Albania. Why did the U.S. do that? After 17 years of war, spending billions of dollars, in fact trillions, and losing so much personnel, U.S. was not going anywhere. We have an asymmetrical war in Somalia, and winning an asymmetrical war is never easy. And there are disagreements. Do we talk to Al-Shabaab? That has never been cleared. But you see now the U.S. is talking to them. And this is the kind of situation you have. We have also a problem in the sense that in Somalia, we have now developed a two-track challenge. So Jubaland and Mogadishu, we don't seem to have the same policy in the two. That is a challenge, because then Mogadishu, particularly facing an election, will use this to create an external enemy, and that can become very problematic. So in effect, what we need now is let's de-escalate, let's have a coherence policy, let us have regional dimension to it, so that we can all talk from one script. Let us stabilize the region. Otherwise, we'll be in a long-drawn war, which will be very costly to us.
Right. Professor Naomi Damba.
Dubal, I agree with what has been said by my colleagues here. Let me take a global historical dimension to this situation. And I like what Hasi, the issues that Hasi raised, and most of you have raised those issues. There is nothing absolutely wrong with what this group of legislators do. If you look at historical development, foreign policy, wartime, and everything. The situation in Somalia called for use of every possible source that we can master within our means. First, to communicate directly with the president of Somalia about our intention. And secondly, is to gauge the temperature in Somalia such that we can prepare ourselves. Dubal, I'm not sure that these legislators just picked up and took a plane and went there without someone in the government knowing. And so that has to be established. Nevertheless, when you look at Vietnam and then you look at Afghanistan, that the ambassador is talking about right now, Colin Powell, and it's go back as old as Sun Tzu, stated very clearly, and what is now known as Colin Powell doctrine, is that you use all diplomatic channels, back channel, front channel, whichever way you want, and don't go to war. And if you decide to go to war, seek popular support for what you want to do, be very clear about your objective. Two, use overwhelming force to achieve whatever you are going to do. And lastly, have a very clear exit strategy. This is what we've been talking about for quite a while right now. Kenya must have an exit strategy out of the situation that we are now bogged in. And Kenya can have a tactical retreat to our border, to buffer our border, and have an agreement with the government of Somalia that within 25-mile parallel or 50-mile parallel, no war zone, no military of any kind, and that Kenya will react to defend itself. There should not be a war in Wajir, in Mandera, when our soldiers are there for peaceful reason. We have a situation that is dealing with our border, and then we have now the ocean. So the point is keeping this friendly zone on our border is nice, but we are not there for peacekeeping because that was not the original purpose went there. It is time that Kenya move back tactically to our border to protect our border and have a very clear policy dealing with Somalia. Otherwise, we are in a quagmire, and there are hundreds, thousands of unemployed young people in this country that would like to go and fight for something. We know they're being recruited. We also have an information right now that the Chamber of Commerce in Somalia have Al-Shabaab members. We are also aware that the Somali intelligence community include former Al-Shabaab members. So is there a potential collision or realignment between Al-Shabaab and the national government of Somalia, where Kenya become an enemy? Now, this is a major potential war that will destabilize this country the way we know it.
All right. Just before, we need to take a short break right now, but if you may just have that particular paper back on This is the Star, which has a very also interesting story as far as this particular topic is concerned. The government investigating several politicians, including MCAs from northern Kenya and top lawyers from allegedly spying for the Somalia government and Al-Shabaab. The lawyers and the probe have worked for government agencies and senior state officials. It says, if you may just look at the Star, I think all of you have the Star, page 4, and there are concerns that they could be passing sensitive and confidential information to the terror group
and the Somali government. It says the politicians are said to be on the payroll of both the Somali government and Al-Shabaab, which has been attacking and killing non-local teachers. Some of those under probe served in key positions in government and have maintained high-level contacts in both countries, even after losing political seats, it continues to say. So some of these revelations that we get here from Mr. also, I think it's good for us to put it on the table and discuss it. We want to take a short break right now. When we circle back, we continue with more on looking at this particular trip by our MPs to Somalia. Was it a parliamentary diplomacy or espionage, as some of the analysts have told us before? Don't go away.
Building tips for general construction should be bought from reliable sources, should not get dry before the specific curing time given for best results, must be kept certified. Exactly 50 kilograms guaranteed in each bag.
Adding strength to Kenya's landmarks, power for specialized constructions, cementing the nation's future. Simba Cement, the strength and pride of Kenya.
Now also produced in Nakuru and Mombasa.
Nimeamua leo mnapack mnaenda kwa ankochie. Ule wagomongo.
Nitoke kwa flushing toilet niende kwa flying toilet.
Yaani wewe mobobia sasa umekuwa mbanki mpaka Krotas anafuriwa nguo unaenda kulipa. Ama ni tunataka kuomba kura na uniambi.
Ile pesa niko nayo naweza kulipa, nikununue, nikuuze, nikulipe tena.
Majakiri uko unabinye mimi kule. Ukajiangalia. Hebu angalia mikono zako. Si maskini kana. Si nimekuambia nisamee. Nikusamee nini? Acha.
The expression hakuna pesa, that's really the issue.
The biggest problem we have that we mismanaged our economy.
Tuko hapa karibu watu 3,000 na wanataka karibu 150 people. Tuko wengi na hakuna gas.
Wakati China inapigana na coronavirus, sisi tunapigana na unemployment.
Hii Kenya ni kuhama, tutahama ama tutaenda wapi? Tumechoka na tumechoka. Na hii ujumbe ifikie president.
Ni nini nyingine mnataka? Ni nini umekosa? Na kama umekosa ambia wa Kenya ile umekosa tukupatie.
Madness going on all over the place. If you carry goods from here to Kisumu, you will pay sales here, pay sales in Nakuru. By the time you get to Kisumu, there's no business you are doing.
We weaponized the fight against spending bills.
Twende holiday na spot on vacation. 2 days, 1 night for half board at Mayan Nanyuki from 10,000. 3 days Masai Mara from 13,000 with transport, accommodation, meals and game drive. 3 days Mombasa from 13,000 with SGR tickets, accommodation, transfers and meals. 5 days Dubai for 53,000 and Zanzibar from 67,000 with flights, accommodation, meals and excursions. Call us on 0741 06 5656 or visit our office on Ngong Road, Ngong Lane Plaza, 4th floor, or visit our website www.spotonvacation.com.
Right, welcome back. You're watching Standing on Guard here. We continue your pace with the conversation around the MP's Somali trip, and we're asking, was it parliamentary diplomacy or espionage? And as I mentioned earlier, also we have the Star, which is covering a very comprehensive report on this. Lawyers, politicians probed over Somalia, it says. And we mentioned that there are concerns that it could be passing, these politicians could be passing sensitive and confidential information to the terror group and the Somali government. The 11 MPs have said that they went to Mogadishu to discuss a solution to the Al-Shabaab menace. And this also has really blown the gasket of the government officials. Some of those under probed, served in key positions in government and have maintained high-level contacts in both countries even after losing political seats. Nairobi is upset that Mogadishu has bypassed the official channels of engagement and decided to talk to individuals, some of whom come from one clan in northeastern. Multiple sources say the Somali government, through the National Intelligence Security Agency, that is NISA, initiated the secret talks with political leaders from Mandera, Garissa and Wajir counties. And that's the conversation we're having with our panelist. Also remember to hit us on Twitter, AM Live NTV. So Twitter handle AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. Also follow me at Dibala there. Hamid Hashi.
Well, Dibala, I think we ought to not question people's patriotism. I think that it's this country, Dibala, we've had a very long history of exclusion, and there's been a long history of smearing people with words that do not befit them. I think that anybody who does these kind of criminal things, if that there is any fact to it, that the intelligence and the police forces should investigate it and haul that fellow off to court. But I don't think we should make this connection between being a Somali and not being patriotic. Ipso facto that you're a Somali, then you're going to pass information to Al-Shabaab. This, harkens back to the days of the shifter. It's a mentality that has been overthrown in this country because the Somali people are loyal, maybe more loyal than everybody else. You remember in 1982, when the government here was collapsing and everybody was running to Kiambu? It's the Somali boys who brought back the government to Nairobi here. In 2007, it's General Ali who brought back law and order here. During the Hague thing, when they hauled our president and deputy president, it's Ambassador Amina Mohammed who was busy fixing the issues at the court and demanding that the president and the deputy could not be prosecuted, and she did a wonderful job. So, as someone once told me, that we've earned our stripes in this country. But what we want is to get those criminal people who are doing bad things and hold them individually accountable for it, and hold them in front of a court of law if these headlines are true. That's the second point. The third point, Dibala, is contextual. I think that, and I think the panelists will agree with me, I think we really need to understand that we ought to change tack on our issues on Somalia. I have said this here on this program, and my colleagues have said it ad nauseum. I think what has happened with the MPs of the other day is that Monica Juma policy is still in the Foreign Office. She might have left, but the kind of aggressive policies I remember my learned colleagues talked about is still there, and maybe this new foreign minister has not put in her protocols and her policy yet. So we need to completely de-escalate this tension between us and Somalia. And there are two places, Dibala, that Kenya's foreign policy and diplomacy ought to work. The Gulf. The Arabs, Dibala, are very busy here in Somalia. They're the ones who are supplying arms. They're the ones who are giving them money. They're the ones who intelligence officers are all over. The intelligence officers are all over Nairobi here and in Mogadishu. And there is a proxy war in Mogadishu between the Turks and the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia. This is just the facts, Dibala. So the first thing is that these Arabs need to leave Somalia. Somalia is not part of the Middle East, and if they look at the color of my skin and the history of these people, I think they ought to know that this is not the Middle East and we're not Arab. This is an African problem and it needs an African solution. This is very, very critical. And I think that the African states here ought to oppose this kind of factionalism from the Middle East to Somalia. That's the third point. The fourth point is, Dibala, we need a special envoy for the president in Somalia. Yes. Can the government please look at my lips and read them? We need a special envoy of the president in Mogadishu. And what is that going to do? Is going to go and help unsolve all these problems. We have a very good ambassador over there who's a man of the military, and I understand why they put a man of the military. But in this place, we need a political diplomat, a person who can, you know, really negotiate, understand the cultural milieu, and talk to these fellows, and we straighten our policies. And I'm going to leave with one last point. The government and our foreign policy and the one of Ethiopia must be absolutely the same when it comes to Somalia. Because what President Farmajo is doing is that he's playing us against the Ethiopians. He's going to Addis Ababa, and he's telling that president over there, a man I admire obviously very much, a real Pan-Africanist, that we need unity and things to be fast-tracked, and that's very true. So our President Uhuru Kenyatta and our government and the Ethiopian government have to be on the same sync, so that when the president of Somalia comes, he knows that we are on the same side, and he's not going to try and put a wedge between us and the Ethiopians, because we have a super diplomatic relation with them. Debal, if we do these things that this distinguished panelist has been saying, I think we're going to see progress on that file.
Okay. All right, let's hear from Dr. Mustafa in light of what we've just read also from Mr.
Yeah, Dibal, proactive neutrality is, I think, what the kind of foreign policy that Kenya has adopted with regard to powers, perhaps, in the Middle East. And the proxy war going on in Somalia between the Turkey-Qatar axis on the one hand and Saudi-UAE axis on the other is actually testing this proactive neutrality that Kenya really wishes to ensure, so that it can engage with countries, including Somalia and the countries of the Middle East, in not in a confrontational sense, but in a way that is going to help stabilize the region. And so it's very important that anybody who is engaging Mogadishu, it's got to be in a structured manner, Dibao. We can't have the left getting into Mogadishu and the right doesn't know what the left is doing in Mogadishu. And that calls for more cooperation, engagement, consultations before any team goes there. And in particular, if it's the more public kind of diplomacy or megaphone diplomacy, yes, some of the MPs say they have a message for the president. You don't go into such kind of a conflict. Ambassador Mwencha was talking about that, and come back and say we have a message for the president. If back channeling is an art, Dibal, it's done in a very stealth manner. People shouldn't even know that you're going into Mogadishu, for example, except the security agencies and very select, perhaps the National Security Council, National Advisory Security Council, they get to know about that, and the mission has got to be very specific. Dibal, I've been involved in a number of back-channel communications and engagements in various conflicts, including in Darfur in Sudan, when Ambassador was the Africa Union. We just didn't meet, in Libya and a few other places. Dibal, I tell you, it is so sensitive and dangerous. I remember in Darfur with the EU partners, and this is where everybody has got to, when you're doing a back channel thing, you need to inform everybody that should know. In Darfur, I remember we were organizing with the EU and other partners to go to El Fasher, to meet with GEM, Justice and Equality Movement. And we had to inform the government of al-Bashir. And in fact, the delegation used to give coordinates to the exact location that they're actually going, so that they don't get bombed or they don't get killed. It's an open warfare situation, Dibab. The problem was that as soon as those coordinates were given to Khartoum, the planes went in and bombed the place, assuming that the rebels were in that place. Can you imagine if such a thing happens to this kind of back-channel communication? Now, what happened is that the next time our teams were going to El Fasher, we don't give the coordinates. We just say we are going there. So it's up to al-Bashir to decide whether he's going to bomb us or not. But before the helicopter lands, that's when you give the coordinates, so that you are there with the rebels. And obviously, you know, the government will not bomb the place. When you have EU officials, you have elders, religious leaders meeting with the rebels that are there. So, but it's not an easy thing. And so it's very important that all this engagement with Mogadishu is actually structured. There will be many other engagements that are in the national interest of Kenya that are going to take place across Somalia. And I'm sure that there must be a strategy for that. I'm sure the government has a strategy, and it's important that all Kenyans actually speak to that one strategy and engage.
All right, let's hear from Ambassador. Dr. Khanenja, it's you, actually.
Yeah, I appreciate sometimes perhaps the frustration that sections of Kenyans may have with regard to what they perceive as lack of progress, and especially in the northeastern counties, that right now there is an education crisis because of the actions of Al-Shabaab and other factors, of course. But, you know, you deal with the government that you have. And the government that we have right now is the government, you know, led by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And any, you know, citizen who recognizes that, you realize you cannot advance national interests of a country solo unless you're confusing personal interest with national interest. There always has, as I mentioned, to be a formula, or as Dr. Mustafa just mentioned, there has to be a structure of engagement. And back-channel communications and the diplomacy, it can be very effective. We've seen it across the world, whether it's finally leading to the peace accord between Israel and Palestine or other places. There used to be lots of back-channel communications and diplomacy before that. However, if we have to do this and we're serious about it, we really have to have an organized, you know, structured way in doing it. And it is true that, you know, perhaps sometimes government or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs needs to update Parliament on certain things. But if there's a parliamentary initiative, which wasn't, because based on this, what the Speaker said, it was not exactly a parliamentary delegation. If there is, then there is need for you to be able to work with the national government in doing that, plus other actors. You know, remember, we're working in an environment, as I mentioned, about the context in which there is quite a bit of open hostility from Mogadishu. And, you know, Kenyans who might not be aware, we were actually very friendly with Farmajo when he came to power. In the beginning. So it's not like this is something that has always been there. And we were very supportive. But of course, because of geopolitics and regional dynamics, you know, things changed somewhere, you know, along the way. And the fact that perhaps a section of Kenyans go may run the risk of actually lending credence to the kind of grievances that Mogadishu right now is expressing, not just regionally, but internationally. And we need to be careful not to play into their hands. Remember, there are internal dynamics within Somalia right now, politically, that can actually make such a situation very helpful to someone who is running for re-election. Now, we don't want to be part of that. Now, at the same time, based on the increasing danger that Kenya faces, not to mention our men and women who rehatted under AMISOM, who are based there right now, you have to be careful as a Kenyan any action you take, because it might actually put those men and women directly in harm's way, and we don't want that to happen. Number two, it might aid a narrative by terrorist organizations that a section of Kenyans, because of their ethnicity and religion, okay, they don't even have confidence enough in their own government. You know, we need to look at it at a national level. And these can advance that. And I'm saying this because one former MP said, you know, who I respected for very many years, that if they're calling us this, treason and stuff like that, let them try us. Who is us? You know, you're creating this false sense of difference. And remember, we've been trying, including on this show, to try to say, hey, there is no Kenyan who is different just because of their ethnicity. There is no us versus them. Yes. But when you start talking about try us, what do you mean, really? And you are someone who's been in parliament, held important positions, and you're respecting the community. You're sending a wrong message, and that can increase the kind of chasm that Al-Shabaab is trying to build between Muslims and Christians or ethnic Somalis and non-ethnic Somalis.
All right, Ambassador.
Well, I think my friends have, you know, talked exhaustively.
All right.
But I want to address the point that is in this article in the Star, page 6. Page 5 and 6, page 4 and 5. The language used there can be very alarming and worrisome, and I hope that this particular journalist who did this investigation has got his facts right. To make an allegation that there are our leaders in this country who are on the payroll of another country that we are hostile to is a very serious allegation. I mean, it's very serious. And if this is not true, I think this is very poor journalism. If it is, then it's very worrying too.
Investigate it.
Yeah. And having said all this, I think what has come out very clear in our discussion is that what the MPs did is not necessarily wrong. It's the timing, the manner in which they did it. And I think we must avoid going to a situation where I thought the language you have used there, this was espionage. I thought that is very extreme. Let's have Kenyans be free. I remember there were days that you could not even cough unless you had permission. I mean, let's avoid that
Which
kind
days
of...
were this? Which days were this?
If you are moving out of the country, you must get an exit. You must get an exit. Where are you going? Where are you going to meet? Let's move away from that kind of state of aberrance in our relationship. Having said that, I think what is important and what is coming out clear is that we have a regional and extra-regional challenge. We are facing a proxy war in Somalia. We have young men and women in Somalia. The region is not talking with one voice. This is a crisis. And the UN was having a meeting here yesterday that Hassan was attending. Let's have a coherent and one strategy, because even the AMISOM forces which are there are on behalf of the UN. And if we are not careful, we'll get a situation. I saw the American forces being asked to leave Iraq, and they were saying, how do we leave? And already we have had that kind of language behind the scenes. So let's be careful how we talk about this, how we handle it, so that, as we said at the beginning, let's calm the waters. Let's come together, because we are joined in the hip between Kenya and Somalia, and solve this thing as sister nations. Otherwise, we are in trouble.
Okay.
Well, I agree with what Ambassador just said. We must have a clear exit strategy out of the situation we're bogged down in. We all know historically that this is a land that has never had peace, except a short period of time when Siad Barre was there. We also know that we will continue to have this border with Somalia, that there has to be a short-term strategy and a long-term strategy to secure our territorial integrity and our population in the country.
Right, thank you. Maybe as we're winding up, we know also there was a timeline with AMISOM of actually trying to get back or to get the boots from the ground in Somalia. In light of what you're talking about with the exit strategy, how is Kenya really positioning itself? Because we do not have a clear exit strategy as it is right now. But AMISOM is pulling out of some of its peacekeeping troops also in Somalia. We know Ugandan troops, so far, they're out. I don't know which other troops actually will be out, but there is a timeline. I can't remember. Was it supposed to be in February or they extended? Maybe it is
this year to 2021.
This year to 2021.
Yes.
So it's actually ongoing to 2021. So let's just discuss about that particular aspect of AMISOM, and in light of the exit strategy that we are also putting on the table. Then we move on to other issues as well. Professor Nomidama.
My way forward will be not to have the Kenyan army and the Ethiopian army directly engage with Somalia, but bring South African army, bring Congolese army, bring those people who are far away from the war zone, such that if Africa is serious about solving its own problem, then you solve the problem, because so long as Kenyans are there, they're reconfigured differently from South Africans who will be fighting to maintain peace and build, help build the country. That is a very clear strategy that has been used historically elsewhere. Why are we not doing it?
Well, go ahead, Pep. Ambassador, go ahead.
Okay. Well, Noah has introduced a very important element that was very difficult even at the beginning when Kenya and Ethiopia were engaging themselves in the war in Somalia. Because the international practice is to always avoid neighboring nations being in a peacekeeping mission, because should there something go wrong, and then your neighbors, you have really a long-term challenge. And so his suggestion that, okay, let's get the two countries perhaps scale back and move away so that you can bring others. But that is still not an exit. The exit, and what is implied in what he's saying, the mission has not been accomplished. What was the mission? Help Somalia build a national army, to stabilize the country, make a viable government, have elections, have a constitution, start addressing development issues. Then you can have an exit strategy. Exit strategy that is time-bound, we have said on this forum here, of all the things I agree with Trump, is one of them which he has been saying, you don't give time-bound exit strategy. You give mission accomplished time strategy, not time-bound. Because when you are fighting a symmetrical war, all they do is melt and wait for your time to elapse, and they come back. So it's a wrong strategy by all means. Talking about 2021 and the rest. Will you have achieved your benchmarks? That remains to be done. So to me, I think what he's saying is very important, that let's get Kenya out of it. But the reason Kenya went, because we were being under attack, our economy was suffering, so we had to go. But now we can say we've stabilized it, let somebody else come in. And so that Kenya gets out, Ethiopia gets out, then you can have neutrality. Because part of the problem that is there, as we have said before, the two powers are not reading from the same strategy.
All right, so they're not reading from the same strategy. Maybe also we could ask, what is the role of the East African Standby Force? And how can they come in handy where AMISOM has not really, maybe to just try and argument, you know, the offices or the forces of AMISOM down on the ground? What is the role of the East African Standby Force?
I think we are still going back then to talk of Kenya and so Ethiopia, because East African Standby strategy is all the same countries.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact the forces which are there are part of East African Standby strategy.
How is
and what he's saying is that let's get others, maybe ECOMOG or Southern Africa, not Eastern Africa.
Not Eastern Africa.
Yeah.
On the exit strategy, first of all, it'll be foolhardy to exit. In fact, they should have a surge in Somalia. By wherever troops they will find, whether it's from West Africa, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, we should have a surge in Somalia. You know what is happening in the last 2 days? Even before AMISOM leaves certain sectors, Mogadishu, has initiated a bloodshed in Gedo and Bulahawa region. They're actually fighting in a clannish sense in that sector. And you can see what's happening. Al-Shabaab is celebrating now. What is happening in southwest sector, the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the SNA, the Somali National Army, are cannibalizing each other. Meanwhile, Al-Shabaab is waiting on the sidelines. Don't be surprised if this is the behavior of Mogadishu. And if AMISOM is going to exit today, Dibao, Al-Shabaab will be back in Mogadishu. They will be controlling things there. We got to be serious. I mean, Mogadishu has got to be serious about what was and what conflicts it wants to address. Is it first stabilize with the help of others, or start fighting, engaging in some clannish wars for political expediency, that the elections are coming in December and January of 2021?
But the whole scenario remains to be very amorphous, because it seems then we are there without any, it's like we're really groping in the dark. Are we aware of what sort of mileage we've made so far? What are the metrics are we using to try and analyze? And I think also African Union can help us this, to tell us this is the medium term. We've achieved such and such from the checklist. We've stabilized this particular region. All the forces in Somalia, the armed forces in Somalia also has been boosted since AMISOM, boots came or stepped on the ground.
Well, Shakespeare once said, cry havoc and let loose the dogs of war. President in Somalia is on a re-election mode. He wants to come back into power, and he is, through battle and through politics, trying to engage certain constituencies in the country. It's really pathetic for him to actually say that there's going to be a one-man, one-vote in Somalia. I mean, even us Kenyans over here could see that there's not going to be one man, one vote over there. So I think that brouhaha, the political brouhaha there, is just about politics or trying to get an extension of his term. I think President Farmajo has failed in every sector that you could bring up. You know, if you had cards here, we'd all give him one, not even two. And I also think that the man in Jubaland has also not spectacularly failed the way Farmajo has, but you know, the man in Juba also, our man in Juba there, and he's our man in Juba, has been, he was an Al-Shabaab before he was changed and became a respectable clan leader. I think the deal was made over here in Garissa at night. And I think that our policy of, and I agree with our learned friend over on the right side, I think that this policy of the policy in Somalia is not really complicated. And everybody tries to make everything so complicated in Somalia. What is so complicated about 5-10 million people running after camels? There's nothing really complicated about that.
Thank you.
We just have to get the policy right.
But you know,
and I just want to finish this point about this. Please, just a little point more.
Because the question I asked and what you're actually telling me is diametrically different.
Yeah, but this is the last point. I'm coming to that point. In Somaliland, just 1 second. In Somaliland, people have made peace. That is in northern Somalia. The clans sat down and they made peace and they've made an administration. They built an army, they built a police, and they've built institutions of democratic government. Why is it not happening in the south? It is not happening in the south because the vested interests of money and power are not allowing it to do it. The ones inside and the ones from without. The ones in the Middle East and the ones in the region. We have to understand that unless there is a Somali state there that controls the territory of the former Somali Republic, what is going to happen is this place is going to metastasize into something completely different. And then we're going to need 500,000 troops to go in there and another 500,000 police officers. We need to really do two things. Either we leave Somalia to its own and let them butcher themselves, or we decide we're going to do the right thing and put the state in there and fix it, because this is an African nation that's part of the AU.
Right. Back to my question, which was clearly avoided by, not answered by Ahmed Hashi. He chose his own way. Let's hear from the Dr. Khaninje.
Yeah.
Stand by force.
Yeah.
No. With regard to metrics, and
I can't answer everything.
You know.
But have you ever realized Ahmed Hashi always has his own answers? If I ask this question, he's going on a different tangent altogether.
You have to listen first.
Okay, let's continue with Khaninje.
Dibal, spokesperson, I think he's been one, are trained not to answer all questions asked by journalists. That's one of the first training any spokesperson goes.
But I'm a very brave person who answers all questions. I just think that I should leave some of the meat to my colleagues.
Then let him answer that straight. Yeah.
Let him speak and then we can.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Yes. If it were possible that we could wall ourselves off and completely forget about, let's say, our neighbors, then we can say, you know what, let's just pull out and that's it. But these two countries, they are joined at the hip. It's virtually impossible for us to actually ignore what goes on in Somalia. Now, what will constitute metrics? Number one, it's always very easy to get into conflict. It's never easy to get out of it, especially in a situation of intractable conflict with increasing regional and international interests. The time when we went into Somalia, initially as KDF, then of course we rehat it, it was a very different environment than actually what it is today. Now, granted, Kismayo was able to be liberated from Al-Shabaab. That's an achievement. They had space where they could organize and train, and they literally rained terror on everybody else, and we were able to reduce that. Does it mean we've gotten rid of Al-Shabaab? Of course, no. Number two, there are certain progress already going on because of the presence of African Union forces that has actually allowed even that government to be in Mogadishu itself. Remember, previously they used to operate from outside. You know, anyone who remembers, it was a time the government was in Baidoa and most of them were living in Nairobi. But right now they can actually live in Mogadishu, even though it's hard enough to control it. And so there are certain achievements. However, where the country is right now, you know, frankly speaking, we can't say once they get A, B, C, and D, then we leave, because they still need to build infrastructure. I believe they will have to redo that constitution somehow to be able to speak to the tension that exists between states and then the central government, and how they can accommodate, ethnicities in a way that can actually be acceptable. Right now they have a 4.5 model, but it's working to some certain extent, but then it's not addressing some ongoing issues. The question of Somaliland hasn't been resolved yet. You know, are they going to remain like that? Will they ever decide to become part of the federal government? And so it is not something we can say once we achieve this and, you know, we get there, because it's going to take, honestly, an effort of all these players, but also importantly, for the region, and this is part of things we're discussing at the UN, IGAD summit, for some of these foreign interests to be mitigated. Because as long as they're there, and for instance, the Gulf War is being exported in here, in Somalia and other, it becomes increasingly difficult, Dibal, to be able to actually solve a problem, because you cannot have an independent agenda as the African Union, or even as IGAD, or even East African Community, when you're having a lot of pervasive interests that are so stuck. And of course, the internal clan dynamics and the fact there is an election coming up with leaders who are not speaking to each other. It's extremely difficult. So with regard to certain success that we can actually be able to talk about, there is a lot of success has been talked about. That is why the president lives in Mogadishu today. That is why we have some level of buffer between, us and the other guys. But with regard to the timelines, I agree with Ambassador. You cannot tell your enemy when you're planning to leave, because then Al-Shabaab will simply sit idle and wait until you get out.
Just a quick word on that, and I think Hassan has answered quite a bit of that. There were three important areas that the mission script focused on. One is, first of all, stabilize Somalia in terms of how do you flush out Al-Shabaab. And that required then the intervention of foreign forces, the AMISOM forces and the rest who came in to flush them out. And I can tell you there was a time when the forces were just locked in Mogadishu. They could not move out of Mogadishu. And there was a challenge, because any territory they conquered, when they moved to a new territory, that territory was also reoccupied by Al-Shabaab. But the whole idea was that as you conquer the territory, you have trained Somali forces who are left in charge of that territory. That has not happened. It's no open secret that Al-Shabaab is controlling quite some large areas. So the mission has not been accomplished. The second one is to organize the political aspect. The political aspect was to have elections, to have political parties along the 4.5 devolution that was there, so that you could be able to take care of all these Somaliland and the rest. The 4.5 are the clans. Somalia has got what they call 4 clans, and a half is the rest.
Yes.
That's what 4.5 means.
Ridiculous system.
And that has also not been achieved. Because it has not been achieved, you can see that even if you organize election, are you going to have voter registration? Are you going to have polls? Will people be able to vote when you don't control the areas? It will be an election. But the last time I was in Somalia, I moved from Mogadishu, the green zone, to State House using an armed vehicle. I was in a tanker to move to State House. And so, how are you going to vote? It's not easy.
The president said there's going to be a one man, one vote.
Yeah, it's not possible. And then there is the economic aspect. The economic aspect is then to bring in the referendum. This is where international community has failed. In fact, what you see in the situation in, whether it is in South Sudan or elsewhere, when people see guns silent, they assume everything has been achieved, pack away and leave. Yet, the fundamental issue has not been dealt with. Why is Al-Shabaab strong? Because they control certain areas. They get taxation, they control the economy. If you are not assisting the country to rein in and bring in resources to that development, Al-Shabaab will continue to be strong. So that is why you cannot just give time-bound exit.
I think let's leave it at that, Professor Naomi Damba,
Yes,
because of
I think
time.
so. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And of course, we're keeping an eye also on what is happening as far as the enemy is concerned. And one of the enemy right now is coronavirus. We want to just give you an update of that as well and discuss with the panelists on how prepared we are as a country. Now, shelves lie empty in grocery stores and pharmacies in Seattle as residents stock up on supplies after officials said on Monday that more people had died from the coronavirus in Washington state, raising a number of deaths to now 6 as it stands. Coronavirus concerns leads to empty shelves in Seattle as a number of U.S. deaths from the novel coronavirus, I should say, rose to around 9, as you can see, all in the state of Washington. And we know this is happening in the King County, which encompasses Seattle, and one was in neighboring Snohomish County. Nationwide, there were more than 100 confirmed cases on both coasts in the Midwest. The Life Care Center, a nursing home and rehabilitation facility in Seattle suburbs, is at the center of Washington outbreak so far. Let's listen in.
I actually went to the drugstore across the street to get some masks, but they don't have it. And then I went inside here. I see that the supply is getting pretty low.
I don't personally think I'll be affected by the actual virus, but I will be by the shortage. So, you know, just people panicking, it seems to be more of the problem than anything else.
I think the other thing you're seeing is that it's empty. I mean, it's pretty dead. A lot of people are working from home. I have a friend that works at Facebook. He's working from home. You know, it's a lot quieter than it used to be. And
new cases are emerging. Chilean President Sebastián Piñera also announced the country's first case of new coronavirus, a 33-year-old Chilean man who had spent a month in Southeastern Asia. Let's listen in.
The rapid expansion that this disease has experienced made us prepare and anticipate that the coronavirus was going to arrive in Chile at any time. Today in Talca, the first proven case of coronavirus in our country has been reported. It affects a 33-year-old Chilean doctor who traveled to Singapore. The doctor is in good health and will be transferred to his house in order to have a very accurate epidemiological surveillance.
Also, we have an update from President Emmanuel Macron as well, and he has this to say. I'm just trying to scroll through my script here, just to give you also an update from France and their perspective. Let's just listen in and have a clip with it.
In these times that we are living and that we are going to live through, because we have entered a phase that is going to last for weeks and probably even months, it is essential to have the clarity, resilience, composure and determination to curb first the epidemic, which we are doing, and then to fight it. We must all be aware that we are and will be mobilized for the long term, but we are ready, and I know that we will have the strength to meet this challenge.
Mais nous sommes prêts.
Africa has so far only registered 2 coronavirus cases, but Sub-Saharan African governments are looking to their experience with Ebola as they prepare for the fragile public systems for outbreaks of the new virus. In 2014, an Ebola outbreak stormed West Africa, leaving more than 11,000 dead, mainly in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, and also reaching Nigeria and Mali. Then the World Health Organization was criticized for what some saw as a delayed response to what became the worst Ebola epidemic ever recorded. Now, the World Health Organization is holding 2 simultaneous regional meetings on the coronavirus in Dakar and here in Nairobi, with the United Nations and international partners with the objective of sharing information, supporting countries, pooling resources. Only 2 cases have been recorded in sub-Saharan Africa, Senegal on Monday and Nigeria last week since the virus broke out in China in December. So far, COVID-19 cases have risen to more than 90,900 worldwide, including over 3,100 deaths across 76 countries and territories, according to a report gathered by AFP from official sources. So this is the reality on the ground. Also, maybe just going to give you the situation on the ground. And before I go there to just the World Health Organization, also we have Trump who toured the National Institute of Health, and also he gave this particular update as far as combating coronavirus is concerned in the U.S.
Well, anything can happen, but I wouldn't say inevitable at all. No, I wouldn't say. We've really we've done a good job by doing it and combating it so early. We have the best people in the world, and I think we're getting a lot of credit for having made that early move. So, no, I don't think that's inevitable at all. Well, I think Congress, we're working along well with Congress to get the various fundings that we're looking for. That's important in terms of stopping what we're doing. Some countries have some very big problems. We're working with them to help them. They're really unaware of, they've never done this before. We do it very well, and we're working with other countries, and that's very important.
And of course, Super Tuesday will be happening despite the fact that coronavirus is spreading. So he says there's no need to fear. People should actually come out in force for the Super Tuesday. But in sports as well, it seems coronavirus is spreading its tentacles, but still the International Olympic Committee is saying it is busy with preparations for successful Summer Games in Tokyo in less than 5 months. And at a time when the coronavirus outbreak is widening, IOC President Thomas Bach speaking at the opening of the Olympics body 2-day executive board meeting in Lucerne, saying they are preparing for a successful Olympic Games in 2020. Many sporting events around the world have either been cancelled or postponed in the wake of the spread of COVID-19 virus. Also remember, fans are barred from Valencia Atlanta Championship League clash over virus as well. The Champions League clash between Valencia and Atlanta will be played behind closed doors next week to try and contain the rapid spread of the deadly coronavirus, according to Spain's Health Minister Salvador Illa. So that is a reality on the ground. I want to just head over also to the World Health Organization site to give you an update of what is here as far as coronavirus is concerned. So they have a situation report that is updated very frequently, and the situation in numbers are also given here. We have globally 90,890 confirmed, and we have 19,222 new cases right now. In China, 80,304 confirmed, 130 new. We have 2,946 deaths so far, 31 which is new. Outside of China, 10,556 confirmed cases, of which 1,792 is new. 72 countries, we have 8 new, and also 166 deaths, 38 which are new. And we can flip over just to see the distribution of COVID virus. Just moving on up here a bit, you have this particular chart that you're given as well. And moving on, you have surveillance, confirmed and suspected cases of COVID-19 acute respiratory diseases reported by provinces, region, and cities in China. I'll just give you the top here, which is Hubei, population of 5917. Confirmed cases so far, 114. We have deaths, 2834. And we're given to understand also that the reports of new infections also is really going down as far as China is concerned. And the list goes on and on. We can go now to other regions. West Pacific region, we have Republic of Korea. No one has died so far. And the last, Republic of Korea, actually, total deaths is 28, I should say. 28. Yeah, and total new deaths so far is 6. Days since last reported case is 0. I was reading elsewhere there. In Europe, Italy, that particular figure has risen so far, 17 as it stands right now. And the total confirmed cases is 2,000. 36. We have also, let's just go to Thailand, look at Southeast Asia region, where we have Nepal and Sri Lanka. We don't have any cases in these particular regions as it stands right now, save for Thailand, India, and none, but we have 43 cases which are confirmed, 5 in India. And in Africa, we have Algeria, which is leading with 4 cases right now. Also Nigeria, none, and Senegal, as it stands. This is now the current state of play within the 24 hours, an update from the World Health Organization. I want just to rope in Dr. Mustafa, who can give us actually a clear picture of what is happening elsewhere. He is from Japan, and we know Japan also have gone and taken extreme measures as far as even the closure of schools as it is right now. Maybe you can give us a clear picture in terms of preparedness and comparing it with our country here and the region.
Thank you.
How do you stand?
Thank you, Dibal. Hashi was very scared of me this morning. He didn't want to come anywhere near me. That's right. Yeah, Dibal, first of all, outside of Wuhan and Hubei's areas of China, South Korea and Japan are the other 2 epicenters of this challenge of coronavirus. But you can see the levels of preparedness that I saw in Tokyo is very high. There is no panic at all. So the information that is given to the people is the correct information, what they need to do and the precautions that they need to take. Everybody is in a mask and the way the health officials at the airport, at train stations, at everywhere, you can see that they are very serious about engaging and trying to, and population following what the government is actually saying. The schools, all schools have been shut, so that means 12.8 million school kids out of school, the 35,000 plus schools across Japan, in order to contain the virus. And it's not a lot, actually. You only have that virus in the Diamond Princess cruise ship, and that's really was the petri dish for this particular virus of the Yokohama prefecture, and a few other cases in Hokkaido, in the northern parts of Japan, and Tokyo. But you can see how fast the Japanese government has moved to try and contain this. This is something that we need to learn here. I understand the president actually disbanded one of the committees and formed another one. We are always very slow. Thank God that this virus hasn't come to sub-Saharan Africa. There are many people who are saying, and with conspiracy theories, that if you're black, you can't catch coronavirus. That's nonsense. You know, if you catch this and if it comes, then we will be in deep trouble. Having said this, Dibal, there are, you know, the highest number of people have died in a day is about 108 people. You know, 137 people die every day of snake bites. So many others, 20,000 plus cancer-related deaths. So there is no need to panic about this disease. What we need to do is to take precautions. If you get in a place that you suspect you're going to be exposed, wear a mask, wash your hands, use the hand sanitizers, and we all will be good. Yeah.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Mustafa. Talking of snake bites, we know also the World Health Organization has reported that a dog in Hong Kong also has been infected by the virus as it is right now. I'm just worried with the stray dogs that we have in this country. if this really happens, Dr. Hassan.
Yeah, well, I agree that a lot more people die of snake bites than those who are dying a day of coronavirus. And we should not panic very much, except snake bites don't have ability to multiply overnight. You know, coronavirus does, and so it can get into millions, you know, very quickly, just like Ebola. Now, I think, you know, God forbid it doesn't come around here, because, you know, as Africans and developing countries, we don't just have sufficient resources, frankly speaking, to deal with it. And that is why we really have to take precautionary measures, you know, to ensure it's not just people who are coming through the airports, but also people who are crossing borders, because we don't know where they're coming from. To just be ready for that, and that's going to take extensive screening. it should not be taken for granted. Now, and the reason I'm saying this because about two weeks ago, my brother was flying in from the US, and he said in some places they were not even, screened. And yet when you're flying from Eldoret, you get screened, at the airport. No, so this is an international flight, it's coming in. Why should we be lax about it? And I don't think that's a government policy. I think just someone is not doing really their job because the government understands the gravity of the situation. So I think we should give people information constantly, not one day, but it's something that has to go out there every day in terms of updating and what we should do in case you have this and these signs. Put it in languages, put it on local radio stations and stuff like that in mother tongue, so people can actually be aware. So in case someone experiences something, they can actually know, no, this is not malaria, because Kenyan, an average Kenyan, when they feel a little bit sick, this is malaria. Okay. So I think we should educate the public to be aware.
I really agree with Hassan. I think that's critical. I work in communications, and I haven't yet seen the mass communications that is needed, so that there's a 5-point bullet that tells you what to do, how to do it, as Dr. Mustafa was saying. I also think that the military, our military should be out into the borders and enforce a very strict discipline. I think they should be at the airports. I think they should be at the ports. I think we should absolutely take really huge steps now so that we can save later. Because if we are lax now, if it hits us, then the cost is going to be massive. So I think that it's critical that the entry points and the planes that are coming here, and one of the things that the government has to do is not tell us that it's in the national interest for a plane to land here. There's no national interest more important than the people of this republic. No. If there's a plane that's coming over there and there are people who are not well, or if there's anything to do with it, I mean, they have to find a containment procedure until we know that they don't have it, and then maybe they get released. But in the first place, those planes and those people should not come to this country until this virus dies out. And there's no national interest more important than the sentiments of the people of this country. And that's very, very important for all of us to recognize, from the top leadership to the normal person in this country. Last point about, I think that the coronavirus is it's not yet peaked, but it will. And I think that it's coming. And the more we're prepared, the better we're going to be at making our people safe from this virus.
Right. The last time we had a major crisis globally was 1918, when there was influenza, and 300 million people were affected, 50 million died. That's a ratio of about 30%. As Mustafa said, if you look at the trend of what's happening in terms of mortality, it's around 2–3%. So what am I trying to say? I think if you listen to that clip from Seattle, the people are saying that the challenge now they have is more fear than actually the actual problem, which means in terms of global action, we have failed. We have failed to come up with very clear protocols on how to handle. Each country is now managing this thing separately. You talked about Ebola experience. I happen to have been involved at the African Union on Ebola, and in fact I want to thank Tedros, our brother who's in the WHO. By that time he was foreign minister, but he had been minister of health, and he did the sterling job. And that's how we ended up getting him elected as WHO. There is lack. WHO should have been in the forefront, and he has done it, but nobody's listening. If you see, the major powers went ahead and announced, when they saw what is happening in their stock markets, the economy was being hit, that's when they moderated. And I think now if you see what is happening, particularly in America, they are doing the right thing. But initially they are the ones who are responsible for this panic that was around, when they went politicizing and the rest. But let's say one thing here now. Dibal, there are procedures. They say this disease is manageable. Let's not cause panic. Let's not stigmatize. In fact, even your nation yesterday, I met some ambassador who was really frustrated even with you, saying China virus. Let's not stigmatize. I lived through Ebola, and I want to thank Kenya for having even sent our men and women who went to Liberia to do that. When as an African you traveled, people scared of you. are now starting to lynch people in the streets. That is wrong. There are protocols, as it has been said. If you see, in terms of international travel, there are protocols that anybody traveling, surveillance should be there, checking and the rest. But let us not stigmatize, let us not cause panic, let us go for simple health measures, washing your hands, making sure you don't cough loud and you don't affect people around.
Yeah. Well, I lived for 9 years in Pierce County, which is bordering King County. The state of Washington was the first one state to have a Chinese-born governor. There is a very huge concentration of Chinese nationals. And the point that ambassador is talking about is happening in America today. People stigmatize Chinese and associate it with this thing. It's already happening in America. And it is very easy, thank God it didn't originate from Africa, because by now everybody would be running away from Africa. The most important thing we have talked about here this morning is preparedness. Like what Mustafa just said of Japan. Every radio station, every television station need to devote the time to talk about this. And the government health services need to come and talk to people, calm the nerves down, but talk about precaution.
Yes.
Because it's the thing has not picked. We don't know where it's going to pick.
Thank you. Right. We just want to